Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Andor Season 2. Rebellions are built on hope. Hello, I'm J-Law, but you can call me Justin, and if you're joining us for the first time, well, we are Geekcentric, a podcast covering the world of movies, TV shows, toys, collectibles, gaming, and all things geek-centric and all things Star Wars-centric. As we gear up for a massive trip to Japan for Star Wars Celebration. It's going to be a hell of a good time. This is like our last record. This is literally the last recording before we go. And I am joined by my Rebellion Alliance, if you will. We have Darcy Hudson, Nate Shelton. How you boys doing? How you feeling?
Just excited. Again, it's so close.
Stone and sky is what I want to say. I'll be like a stone in the sky.
Yeah, on a 14-hour flight, sure. I believe that. I totally believe that. This is exciting, man. We're talking about Andor Season 2. We're gearing up to go to Japan for Star Wars Celebration, literally the single biggest Star Wars event. It's a great time to be a Star Wars fan. It's a great time to just be geek-centric, as Nate always says. So it's very exciting. How you guys feeling being immersed back into this Andor story, if you will?
Well, they picked up that rebel intrigue and just the tensions of a growing war so well. So it was a great, intriguing thrill ride again. So yeah, stoked to be talking about it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, even if you've yet to watch the season 2, there's a fantastic recap that they put out that's 14 minutes long, and it just kind of shows you, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, for season 2 as well, but just how dense and jam-packed this story is. And I know sometimes dense comes with a negative connotation. It's a wonderful thing, but
sure.
But that 14-minute recap was so helpful, and like you said, Darcy, it is so fantastic to be back in this version of Star Wars, this genre for Star Wars.
For sure, yeah. And I think when you have a 14-minute recap, that's pretty much saying, some shit happened last season that you need to be up to speed on before you get into this. So I guess that goes without saying. If you haven't seen Andor Season 1 and you somehow landed on this podcast, I would probably let you know we might spoil some stuff for Andor Season 1, so you might want to exit and come back after you've watched that, or the recap at least, because that'll give you a lot of background information. But yeah, we're talking spoiler free today for Andor Season 2. Let's get into the synopsis before we start talking about everything else. Let's get the audience up to speed. Lucasfilm's Emmy-nominated thriller Andor returns for its long-awaited conclusion on April 22nd. The second season takes place as the horizon of war draws near and Cassian becomes a key player in the Rebel Alliance. Everyone will be tested, and as the stakes rise, the betrayals, sacrifices, and conflicting agendas will become profound. Rife with political intrigue and danger, the series is a prequel to Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which portrayed a heroic band of rebels who steal the plans to the Empire's weapon of mass destruction, the Death Star, setting the stage for the events of the original 1977 film. Andor sets the clock back 5 years from the events of Rogue One to tell the story of the film's hero, Cassian Andor, and his transformation from disinterested, cynical nobody into a rebel hero on his way to an epic destiny. This series stars Diego Luna, Stellan Skarsgård, Genevieve O'Reilly, Denise Goh, Kyle Soller, Adria Arjona, Alan Tudyk, Faye Marseille, Verada Sethu, Elizabeth Dulau, with Ben Mendelsohn and Forrest Whitaker. Showrunner of this series is Tony Gilroy. The first chapter of Andor Season 2 will premiere April 22nd, with subsequent chapters debuting each week. So this is a different release strategy for the show. It's not a week-to-week episode. They're doing 3 episode drops. So actually over the course of 4 weeks, you'll get the entire season, starting as of April 22nd. And we'll talk about that when we get to story, because I think that's kind of very interesting that they decided to do that. But a huge thanks to our friends at Disney Studios Canada, as well as Lucasfilm, for giving us the entire season, all 12 episodes of this show to watch for the purpose of this review. We're very grateful. We're very excited. And let's get into this conversation. Let's start off by just talking about the look of this show. It's something that was so iconic from the first season, and here we are back in season 2, and it feels like we're just picking up where we left off with these environments that feel so lived in, that feel so cold and calculated. How did you guys feel about the look and the vibe of this season of Andor?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I think, and we talked about it heavily during our watch club for season 1 and during our initial thoughts of season 1, and I've always appreciated how much they use the real world locations, and how they focus on that, and how it just helps the scope and scale of the look of this show to be so to be huge, basically. And you're seeing locations in the case of season 1, like Aldani shot in the Scottish Highlands, right? And we get those mountainous, like, big ranges. And then in season 2 we have Chandrila, which is shot, a lot of the locations are in Spain. And again, we get some gorgeous, like, mountain shots in this, and the budget is just so big and massive for what they're able to do and how they're able to capture it. And it really, like you said, Justin, it makes the show feel so much more real, lived in, and immersive, without the need for too many green screens or visual effects or the volume. Again, whenever we talk about the comparison between real world locations and the volume, something that was introduced through The Mandalorian, and it is such a phenomenal technological, leap for filmmaking, I think it was used a bit too much. We got a little bit too happy in our honeymoon phase. The honeymoon's over with the volume, and I so appreciate getting to see these massive locations and real world locations, even some of them areas shot in London for something like I don't know if, like, Coruscant is shot there, or just certain areas of, like, the ISB area I know was in London. And so getting to see those cityscapes, and then to know that, okay, maybe there's just a little bit of visual effects painted on in the background, that's fine. It's really having these full massive sets that they build and work on that make this show stand out so much amongst the Star Wars live action.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they use a lot of London subways for the ISB stuff, because
That's
the
what it is,
cold
yeah.
architecture and the brutalist nature of that stuff. What I love about this show, and again the first season as well, they do such a good job of depicting, again, the, like, your cold, sterile ISB environments, and juxtapose that with those real lived-in areas that are being oppressed and stuff like that. So it's really cool to return to that very much so with this season, where we get to see both sides of the war through the lenses. And again, as we're going through it, that ISB is starting to show its cracks as we're leading up to the end of it almost. So it's really cool to see, again, the journey through both these worlds at the same time, and how they use the visual imagery to really to paint and then create that difference visually. So it was really cool.
Yeah, I think the same sentiments of what you're saying is how I feel about this season and about this entire show. I think it's cinematically beautiful. The visual style that came out of the first season that felt so grounded and gritty, it's continued here, and everything it's like there's tactical realism in every frame. It's just, you have, like, as you guys were talking about, like, the sort of rusted industrial design that might be reminiscent of Ferric or some of the oppressed areas, like you said, Darcy. But then you have this, like, clean line brutalist style that feels sterile and cold, that hits the Coruscant vibes, and it very much symbolizes that. And I think the show is just the way it leans into the idea of textured chaos for the rebellion, and this imperial oppression with, like, this balancing beauty and bleakness, and with the equal measure, like, everything has so clean lines. I think there's just such an intelligent um, uh, production design that is put into it, and I think that really helps to elevate the cinematography in a lot of ways. That using natural lighting, handheld camera work, everything feels like it's boots on the ground, with a sense of authenticity. And I think that marriage of production design and cinematography, in a lot of ways, I think it rivals some successful blockbusters that, as you pointed out, Nate, might rely too much on the green screens or the volumes and so on and so forth. So I think this feels incredibly unique for Star Wars, and I think it's elevated in a way where they are choosing real environments, but also like in a grand scheme of things, using practical sets, like actual environments that feel tangible, that you can that aren't contrived of just digital rebuilding. And I think it makes this story and this whole corner of the galaxy just feel more intimate and more personal in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think, talking about the practicality of it all, I totally agree with you, but I also love that we're getting so many practical effects in this show.
Yeah.
In some of the costuming and the creature design. There's a sequence on a farmstead where a bunch of people are having a lovely outdoor meal, and the shot is focused on a specific character listening to another character. But I couldn't help but stare at this giant ox creature that was sitting behind them, and it's fully, practically realized. The incredible alien species that we get in this show, which, I think the sequel trilogy kind of gets a little bit of a rough go at not necessarily including as many of the alien creatures that we knew from long ago. And here we're going to get to see, a lot of different alien practical alien costuming, and they're peppered throughout. We don't ever get any of them as a main character, which I think would have been really cool if we could have maybe gotten a little bit more of that. But it was awesome to see some of the politicians or some of the rebel characters interacting with full dialogue on screen, and in a show that feels so grounded. At no point in time did it take me out. And I think that's huge kudos to the people performing on both the vocal side of those characters, but also the puppeteers and the human cast as well that are acting off of them. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense if you don't have him as a main character with the human supremacist empire and this being a spy show. Aliens wouldn't really be the most undercover agent you can send, I guess. So
Sure. I get that. But I also think like there is a sense of regime to the empire. Like you don't see very many. I don't think you see any creatures or aliens.
No, because they are human supremacists. They think that they are the supreme race in the universe.
And the only real people that can infiltrate them are humans. But that said, I do agree with you, Nate. Like that was something that a lot of people had with season 1, is that there was a heavy focus on the human characters. We didn't get any creature characters as it doesn't need to be a main character, but at least along the lines of being associated with our main characters that we might see more regularly. Like there wasn't really any of that other than, as you pointed out, just secondary or background elements that really did. Again, they brought that Star Wars element. Imagine you didn't have any of that, then this would just be a space political thriller. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't have that same sort of thing. So they knew how to, like, as you said, Nate, pepper it in a way that it feels still cohesive to the Star Wars galaxy while still feeling incredibly unique in its way of its storytelling.
I'd love to just shout out because
the music.
Well, hold on. Wait 1 second. Because you know what?
I was just trying to beat you to it.
I love it. No, but it goes hand in hand with what I want to talk about, which is the fact that this show continues to explore various aspects of culture around the galaxy. The fact that this is, and we're going to talk about the pacing in a little bit, but I wanted to mention, like, the 12 episode season gives them the ability to give us glimpses at things that aren't just battlefields or aren't just, political Senate meetings. Like we actually get to see what grocery shopping is like. We get to see Chandrillan customs and culture.
Propaganda.
And we even get to look at propaganda, or as I like to call it, palpaganda, in this show. But through the propaganda, we get to see daytime television in this universe. We get to see infomercials. And I just think it's so cool because last season, we got to see the beach, the tourist destination of Niamos. And then in Skeleton Crew, we got what a middle-class suburban neighborhood could look like in this universe.
I'm saying.
And every single time they do this, it causes maybe a little bit of dissension in the Star Wars fandom, but I eat it up. I absolutely love it because anything that can sort of bring our world and the Star Wars world almost closer together and merge them in different ways, but still add that Star Wars twist to things. It's always so fascinating to see, and it makes me so happy.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was like, some people were, I think even Kevin was actually like, didn't really vibe with the sort of suburban town within Skeleton Crew. But it's like, what's to say that doesn't exist? Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean
it's
it
a
doesn't
massive
exist.
galaxy.
Exactly. Just
and we
because
spend most of our time in the Outer Rim. Like,
exactly. And our like this show allows us to see things like infomercials or daytime soap operas or propaganda. You know what I mean? Like, it allows us to experience what it's like to be a citizen living within the Empire, which is a perspective that we've never explored. And I think that is where it can kind of that's where this series really does elevate the experience of Star Wars. It's not on the, as you said, outer rim of the galaxy. It's like, it's on the ground. You're living it. So I think that's the success of the angle that Tony Gilroy has brought with to the show, is to focus it on the people and the characters that kind of intertwine. But before we get into characters, I'm sure you want to talk about music, Nate. I tried to beat you to the punch, but the score is phenomenal. I think it just the way that the score this year, even just, or this season, mixes in sound design. There was one episode that just started off that was just so profound, and you hear the music weaving within the sound design, and I was just like, man, I absolutely love that. And I think it's very much that spy thriller vibe, while also having the heroism of like Star Wars.
You can hear like almost the beginning of that rebellion theme kind of starting to
that
pop
Cassian
up
theme
the show.
Is like that
so
sort of
good.
Yes, it's so good. So I was really impressed with the music this time around too.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of it is Nicholas Britell's work, but it is actually the main composer for this season is Brandon Roberts, who has
so it's
taken
like a
over,
Ludwig thing, right? Like,
kind of,
like how Ludwig with
themes.
Mandalorian, and then and then he just kind of okay, cool, that's cool.
But Brandon does such a good job, and like you said, weaving it in. I think literally the first like minute of this season, there is like a string swell that just gets you into the okay, we're part of the rebellion, we're on a mission right now, and it is so well done. And I think it's such incredible work, and the way that it's not always easy for a composer to have to like take over for someone who did such a phenomenal job, and the music will get your heart pumping, and I think intense moments, victorious moments. There's moments that brought me to tears. There's rock guitar again. Like I think we commented last season, like there's rock guitar in Star Wars.
That there's a dance song.
There's a club song.
It's a club. I was like, bro, I would jam out to that. Like, it had such like a mix of like EDM vibes that feel more like futuristic in
and just the way they pair the imagery you're seeing with the sound. Sometimes it's very juxtaposing. Sometimes it goes so well together, and just everything is for a reason, and it just works so well.
The way that needle drop though happens is pretty dope. I liked how that needle drop happened.
And I think talking about the culture again and exploring culture, it's always fun to get to hear like the diegetic music, right? And getting to hear what the characters are hearing. And let's just say there is a moment where we get to hear dinner jazz, or jats, as Disney is now calling it. It's no longer
they've changed
it.
So rightfully so.
They've changed it
because
now.
Then we can't now. Like I guess we went too hard with it when we were talking. We did that whole episode.
We went really hard talking about jizz. Yes, that episode.
I'm just joking.
No, but I think again, like getting to explore the culture of these people and these planets, even in these terrible times in the galaxy, you're still able to see sort of the creativity, the in-world creativity that they have for Star Wars. And for longtime fans, it is so refreshing and rewarding to get that stuff, because it's like, yes, of course we absolutely adore all the music that came before, but giving us something that feels new and also feels, again, lived in this world is just, it's the best. It's so cool.
If this was a drinking game, lived in
and jizz. Let's go with that. There we go.
Jizz is a double shot.
We're talking about music, everyone.
Yeah, okay. Jeez. Star Wars music specifically. Let's talk about the characters and performances in this show, though, because I think, I've written down a few that really stood out to me. But I would love to throw it to you guys. Who wants to kick
off? I feel like we can't talk about the show without talking about Diego Luna, because this whole series is about the journey of the man we saw at season 1 into who he was in Rogue One. And through these 4 years that we journey through in this season, he goes on a journey, and every time you understand why he is where he is when you see him in Rogue One, and it's such a beautiful job. Like he was born to play this character, and it means so much to him. And you can tell that with every scene he's doing, he is giving his all because it's so good.
Well, he is executive producer on the show, so it you know, to your point, that commitment comes out in so many ways, and yeah, the emotional delivery that we see and growth of Cassian through Diego performance is remarkable.
And I mean, catching up with him in this season, it just puts into context just when you look at him in season 1 and you see him in those early episodes, you just see how much he's grown, how much confidence he has, and how he's so much more of a seasoned rebel spy by the time we meet him in season 2. But then he still breaks. He still needs to adapt when things don't go as planned. And Diego just has this energy about him where we always talk about, like, I love when we get to talk about the body language of an actor and the way that they can, I think almost every episode, maybe this is part of a drinking game, but we talk about acting without saying anything. And I think the way that Diego is able to, he never overplays his emotions. You know what I mean? He's always at the exact amount of emotion that he should be at for what he's going through. And it's so grounded. And I think this season, getting to see different facets of him starting to come undone, but then being hardened through the process of everything that's going on. I can't see anyone else as Cassian Andor. And I'm just so happy that we got him, in this role.
Yeah, he's definitely defined the character. I actually like him more in the series than I did in Rogue One, to be completely honest with you guys. I wasn't blown away by his performance. It felt very like he just kind of filled a role. But here, to see that, to see the depth and the commitment that he's given to Cassian Andor, it obviously means a lot. And this whole series makes Rogue One stronger as a film.
So yeah,
100%. We can all agree on that.
Oh yeah.
Surprisingly, I did not have Diego Luna written down as one of the people that I selected, but you were mentioning acting with your eyes and acting without words, and the person that stands out to me, there's two people that stand out to me, is Genevieve O'Reilly, who is just outstanding in this. She is literally putting on a masterclass of acting. The way she's able to, through her eyes, you can see her lying, you can see her hiding, you can see the fear in every moment and every decision that she's making, and it's such a fractured portrayal of Mon Mothma, and just watching her navigate the political chessboard, and again sacrificing her own personal life, and it just adds so much more depth to the rebellion's early foundations, like what went into it. It validates the rebellion as being so much more than just the opposition to the empire. It's this, her portrayal, it's just it shows a woman who's on the verge of breaking, and I think she never lets it crack show.
No,
never lets a crack show.
She brings such a nobility to the character. Like, you really feel like she grew up through the trials and tribulations of the political conflicts and stuff like that, and that has hardened her in very much how the season hardens Andor. And again, we see her faced with what the rebellion really means this season, and how that changes her, and again leads her to become the face of the rebellion later on. It's just, yeah, again, a beautiful performance from her.
Well, and I think this, we've had opportunities to see Mon Mothma in stories outside of Return of the Jedi in the animated side of things, but I do think that Andor is such a phenomenal representation of how to take a character in the background and elevate them in astronomical ways beyond just that one line from Return of the Jedi. And I cared so much about Mon throughout this story and throughout this season, and I think that is hugely in part to, yes, the writing, but to Genevieve's performance. And I know you said, like, we get to see her and she's incredibly strong, but getting to also see some of those moments of weakness in the quieter parts of her performance it's so good. And so good. I love her so much.
Can I try and guess who else is on your list there?
Yes,
I've got one. I gotta say, Denise Go this season was incredible. Like, her, like, Dedra, It was the she brought heart almost to the ISB in that I cared about her story while also wishing she didn't win because
yes,
she's such
absolutely.
a good villain. Like,
yes.
she just does such a good job this season. And the way that her arc goes was, I didn't expect where it was ending with where the show started. So, and she just did a brilliant job, again, showing what the effect of this war has on someone working high up in the Empire and in this power-hungry battle of trying to climb the ladder and stuff like that. It was such a cool, again, lens to view the Empire through, which we don't really have the chance to do that. So she was great.
She was outstanding. She was first on my list. She is chilling. Like, her performance, I feel, captures the sort of icy conviction of someone who is just consumed by the Empire's ideology. And I think in season 2, we see her unraveling, right? And this is where those cracks start to show, and I really enjoy it. And it's not in weakness, but in obsession more than anything else. And I think, she, much like Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma, and as you said, Nate, she is so terrifying in the quietest ways. Like, her looks and the way they've done her makeup to like accentuate her cheekbones to give her almost a female Tarkin vibe. Like, I feel like the way they did a design on her was to kind of give her that high cheekbone. And yeah, she is one of the most compelling characters and most compelling villains I've seen. And yeah, like, her arc is very, like, you could kind of see it coming, but at the same time you didn't expect it. And yeah, I think Denise Go did an amazing job this season. I'm so glad we got more time with her.
Well, I think her and Kyle Soller, who plays Cyril Karn, both of them are winning and losing this season, and it's great to see. And I love getting to see, especially someone like Cyril, who, it's the kind of character that you don't want to feel bad for because he's a bad guy, but you can't help but feel bad for him in a lot of moments. And it's interesting because I think the last two characters that I would have pegged for giving us the majority of actual comedy in this season would be those two. And so getting to see them and having scenes with them where I'm laughing my head off, and Catherine Hunter, who plays Edie Karn, who's Cyril's mom, contributes to that in a huge way. And it's just getting to sort of just literally even just a shot of, there's a specific shot that I won't spoil of Cyril that I was just like dying because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been there.
Yeah, I would say the comedy in and around them is almost like Severance, like dark comedy. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like you chuckle at it. But yeah, Kyle was another one on my list. Like, he is like tragically fascinating. Cyril Karn.
Cyril Karn,
yeah. Cyril Karn. Say it again.
Cyril Karn.
Not cereal.
Cyril. No, not cereal.
But he does eat cereal.
Yes, Cyril Karn, who eats cereal, remains tragically fascinating. He is so fascinating in his tragedy, and I think that it just shows how dangerous blind ambition can be, and I think also just what desperation for purpose can also yield. Yeah. I just think that Solar brings such an awkward intensity that makes you constantly question whether to pity him or fear him. Like, I don't really know, but that's all on Kyle Soller. And I think that, to your point, Nate, like you said it before, it's like it's part of the writing. I think that part is probably like it's there for sure for these characters and their arc, but defining these characters is solely on these actors. And I think they've done such a great job with giving them that Star Wars-esque villainry. Even the heroes, like Diego Luna, feeling like kind of like a Han Solo to a certain degree. It's Kyle and himself. It's just, he brings such an awkwardness to him that you just like, you don't know if he quite fits in or exactly how dangerous he's actually going to be in a situation. And I think that shows entirely in this season.
Yeah, well, I think one of the coolest things, I mentioned it to Nate, was throughout the season, I did not expect myself to be comparing Cyril and Andor so much based on how they were in the first season. And this season, there is so much you can draw between the two. And again, that just goes to Kyle Soler's performance of portraying someone on the other side, just, again, working for a different leader or following someone else's orders type thing, and how that can affect him. It's really cool. It really, again, the story, they tell this season with all the characters is incredible, because there's not a moment where I'm like, oh no, we're not going back to that. We're getting another story with someone else. Like Luthen and Clea this season were incredible as well. So
yeah.
I like, again, I can't, we could talk about every character, I think, because everyone was doing so good.
Yes, I totally agree. But the last person on this list that I have is Stellan Skarsgård. And I think we have to talk about him because he was so pivotal in the first season. And in a lot of ways, you know, first, Stellan just continues to just crush it as Luthen Rael. I think every scene of him is just electric, and you know, the way he's just balancing being, you know, manipulative, but also like showing sort of the emotional burden of what this has become and what it is. There's moments in this season where you see the slip of the mask. You see the mask drop. And I think that like he's very fragile, right? Like he's very fragile. And I think you can see that. And I think this is probably one of the most powerful performances and powerful characters from the show. And I don't know, like, I know we had that beautiful monologue in season 1, but that anchored his character so much. And I feel like that just gave context. And now watching this, I just think of that monologue and what that character stands for. And it's just the way it was established. So I have so much love for Luthen and just what he and Stellan for what he did. And just the idea of like sort of being like the unsung hero of the rebellion in a lot of ways. Right.
Yeah, I think both he and Elizabeth Dulau as Clea, we really get to see the aspects of that relationship. I think a lot more this season. I think last season, you know, I think Clea was such a secretive character, or Clea was such a secretive character, and so we didn't get a ton of her. But in this one, we definitely do get a little bit more of her, and she is so good. I think she quickly rose up to be one of my favorite characters in this show. And there's an episode that focuses specifically on her, and she just gives such a phenomenal performance. I was floored by her. I do want to mention Faye Marseille as well, who plays Vel in this season. Like you mentioned, that incredible monologue from season 1. Justin, I gotta say, it's at least up there. I don't know if it's better than, but it's at least up there. We get a phenomenal, very honest and angry monologue from Vel this season, and Faye Marseille just delivers that so powerfully, to the point where, like, she's talking to a specific character on the screen. It feels like she's talking to you. Like it hit me in my chest.
That's
and
the
it's
point.
So good. Yeah.
That was the point for sure. She nailed that as well. Just as, and I think I wonder if it was because of Luthen's monologue, or you know, Stellan's monologue that he delivered, that she felt she needed to kind of bring that energy. But we talked about this as well, Nate. It's just like the way these monologues serve as personal manifestos to each of these characters, with also the idea of a manifesto being so integral to the rebellion and what sort of sparked it, if you will, or gave it its sort of its scope, if you will, of what it needs to be by Nemec in season 1. So I think these monologues serve to define each of these characters, and there's such great moments, because at the end of the day, this is a character driven Star Wars story, right? Like we know what's happening in the galaxy. We know where this is going. So it doesn't need to be burdened by the idea of, you know, setting things up for what's going to happen. It's, you know, it's just a matter of tying it all together. And you do that with these characters, and it's really great. But Darcy, you're right. It's like we could talk forever about all of these characters.
Can we talk about Adria Arjona a little bit? She's so good in this show as Bix Kayleen.
Sure, if you want to talk about her, that's completely fine. She is great. I think she's a great actress. I loved her in the first season. I'll personally say I think they did her dirty in this season, and I don't think that there was enough of her. I think that they kind of consumed this idea that you know, after what happened in the last season. I think that like the events of last season really do set up to why she kind of gets pushed back. And I don't know, she was so strong and so prominent, and I was just motivated by her in the first season, and then all that just feels like sucked out in this second season. And I it's nothing against Ariana,
she did a great performance. It's just her character didn't go anywhere that I was hoping. Almost,
I know.
It was.
I was hoping she was. I was really hoping for more for her character.
Yeah,
I don't know. I might disagree. I just think that, and whether if you feel that it might be not as natural feeling, or a little more like synthetic in the writing in terms of how they treat her this season, I can fully understand that. But I just think that we get to see her at her lowest and her most capable this season. Like a lot of these characters, again, we get to see her at her breaking point. And yes, her story takes a little bit longer to kick into that high gear, but I think I personally appreciated that, because I think it adds so much to the later part of her story this season. And I would have loved to have seen more of her, sure, but I think I think what they did was purposeful, and at least for me it worked.
Yeah, I can see it working for some. I feel like, though, in like I said, in regards to how her character was introduced and treated in this first season, I was expecting her coming back rearing, ready for like revenge, and I don't know. She kind of got consumed by what would happen to her last season, and that kind of, again, gently pushed her to the back. But I think that can be said about like characters like Val, who still has their moments, but then gently get pushed back. Like, I think the reality of this situation of this season is to obviously have all of these characters on the board that are influencing the bigger story, but they slowly get phased back, because obviously we know where we're going with Rogue One and who's going to be around for those events. So it kind of, it shifts gears within the season to kind of give the focus on the characters, which is why I think Bix got pushed back in some regards. So, but yeah, I love Adria Arjona. I think she's so good in everything I've ever seen her in. And yeah, I would have loved to have seen more of her here. But like we're talking about it here, let's kind of get into talking about, I guess the last person that should be talked about is Ben Mendelsohn, who's returning as Krennic. I think, the way we see this character is exactly how we left him, but a little more alive from Rogue One.
Definitely more alive, yeah.
But definitely that sort of that demeanor, that sort of like, military demeanor that he has to him, but also not really being able to trust him. I think he slips back into this character very easy.
Yeah, he's kind of like peak Orson Krennic here in this season, and I think he, like Cyril and like Dedra, right? He's obsessed with getting things right, with power, with the approval of his higher ups, and specifically Emperor Palpatine. And I think, like you said, he seamlessly moves back into the role, and we don't get a ton of him, but again, I feel like that adds to the impacts of when we do get to see him.
Yeah, of course.
I think it makes those moments feel more powerful. And anytime you get to see him in this show interacting with the characters that we've grown to know and love from season one, it's incredibly exciting. You're just like, oh my gosh, they're doing the thing.
For sure. He also feels like the biggest seed plant to keep us connected to how the events of Rogue One really kind of get going, right? And that's sort of the whole purpose of this, right? Of this season, is to just get us into Rogue One. And yeah, let's transition here then into story. I think, how did you guys feel about the story first, before I kind of kick things out? Because I feel like I'm more interested in one aspect of the story than the other, but I'll throw it to you guys.
So what I liked about the stories from this season is the fact that the release schedule is set up in the 3 episode chunks. It makes sense, because each of these 3 episodes really play like a movie. And having watched Rogue One after finishing the season, that one also has a very similar structure. There's 3 kind of adventures that pack together into the movie. So I really like the fact that they maintain that kind of aspect of storytelling, where we do 3 episodes. What I didn't like per se about the story was the fact that we're only getting one snippet from a year. There's so much that happens between the episodes that I'm like, I wish we kind of got to explore that a bit more, or see how we got from point A to point B a bit. And It's nothing to say that the stories are bad. It's just the gaps are noticeable, I guess.
Yes, and I think that's how I felt as well. I think what makes this season bold is its structure, but it's a bit of its detriment. Obviously, like I was saying, this is a clear path that leads us directly into Rogue One, and I think the show is just it's carrying that sense of inevitability, and as it walks us through each of these years, they're interesting moments, but they feel so disjointed from one another that I feel like I would have appreciated a little more connectivity to them outside of, again, just each chapter being a chapter, if you will. But it's sort of like it's the heartbreak of the journey. Do you know what I mean? What we really kind of are experiencing with this season, and we know where things are going to go, right? And I think that kind of works for it, but also against it, if that makes sense.
But that's what Star Wars is, right? Star Wars is providing stories with gaps so that we can get more stories in the future. And, Justin, you and I were talking, off air about like, where else could they possibly explore in the various timelines? And realistically, maybe they could explore between these years. Who knows? But I think in terms of the release schedule, and both of you called it out, I think it does so much for the pacing for this season in such a good way. And I understand that there was a lot of controversy and backlash for when they announced the schedule for this, especially from people like us who usually want to cover it weekly, because it's like, how do we cover 45 to 55-minute long episodes in a week, that at that pace? And it can be tough. But from a fan's perspective, just watching it, I think it's going to shorten the amount of time people are going to talk about it. It's only going to be 4 weeks. And obviously we love speculating on things week to week as fans. But I just think it improves the formula because, like you said, Darcy, it follows that formula of Rogue One and the formula of season 1. You've got the setup, you've got the middle episode, and you've got that bombastic finale. And I just think that works so well to cover so much ground in 12 episodes. And like I said at the top, like each episode is so densely packed that I would get 20 minutes in, I would check to see where I am in the episode, and I'm like, how are we only 20 minutes into this episode? That's crazy. But I think what really helped is last season, I might have checked the timing on the episode and thought, man, we're in this first of the 3 episode arc. This feels really slow. Right. And I think we talked about that in season 1. And then episode 2 came out. Pacing was a little better this one. And then the 3rd episode comes out and you're like, wow, yes, no, this really makes sense that this stuff needs to be watched 3 episodes at a time. So I think it works so well from a pacing perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I think the decision to release this season in 3 episode blocks as chapters, like they're focusing chapters, is smart. I think that is a smart part of what they're doing, and I think it allows each arc to kind of help establish key moments. But to Darcy's point, there's so much that happens within that year, right? So it's like we're only seeing one point in time, and I get that prequels and this idea of gaps in time is sort of baked into Star Wars, but it only really kind of highlights the key elements that are integral getting us to Rogue One, right? So it's structured in a way to help establish that. But again, I that doesn't take anything away from the fact that the writing is razor sharp. Refusing to simply see the rebellion as just the good guys. This is exploring the moral ambiguity, the personal sacrifices, the gray areas of building a movement. And it reminds us that a rebellion is just so much more than soldiers or heroes. It's spies, it's smugglers, it's senators, and people who don't always agree on what freedom looks like. I think that's the one thing. They all can agree that the Empire isn't the way to go, but they all have their own sense of what freedom looks like. And I think, I think Andor season 2 really just means to kind of, doesn't just set up Rogue One. I think it just gives more definition and deepens it and makes just every choice and everything that happens in that film more meaningful. I think one of you had said that before. And I think by the time that you wrap season 2, you'll realize that this isn't just a Cassian story. This Cassian is very much the center, and there's a lot of different characters that connect to him. This is a story about how a rebellion is born through the connections with people and the cracks within the crumbling empire. So I feel like they've done a really great job of keeping that motif, that political thriller, that drama core to this season, and really delivering a good second season.
Well, and I think to that with the divisiveness on both sides in between all the cracks of the wars of Star Wars, right? I think it's the focus on the secrecy and the danger and the evil on both sides. It's one of those things that, like, I still remember to this day, talking about Rogue One and going to see Rogue One the first time, and you see, I can't remember his name right now, but one of the characters just, I think it's Baz or something, Baz, shoot a stormtrooper in the head at like point blank range or something like that. And I remember the first time watching it and sort of laughing along with the crowd, like, ha ha ha. And then the second time watching and laughing a little less. And the third time watching and really feeling like, oh my gosh, no, that's not good at all. And I think this show just does, and especially this season, does such a good job at showcasing that, not just for seeing evil on the rebellion side, but also seeing the divisiveness in those sides where the levels of access to information actually hinder both sides in some very devastating ways. And I think we get some really awesome moments that show that and focus on that we wouldn't get if this season was only 8 episodes long. I think the fact that it's 12 episodes gives us the ability to do that, and also getting to see the contrast between the super rich, powerful side with like Mon Mothma and the Senate, and then the common folk who are affected by the war and by what the rebellion is even doing to them in this story. So it's the themes of Rogue One and the way that they expand upon what they did in Andor is such an achievement, and I love this story. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so much depth and just definition that's added to this whole idea of the rebellion, because when you're introduced to the rebellion, it's just like, again, it's just the opposition. It's the heroes to the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
But this solidifies and grounds it all. It means to give more definition and deepen what is the rebellion, what are they driven by, and you see their loss, you see their struggles within this. And I think, yeah, like any war film or political drama, you're always going to see both sides. And what's interesting, like you were pointing out, it's all of this divisiveness that really serves to be so rich for this giving more meaning to what the rebellion is.
Yeah, again, what this season does, or like these 2 seasons do, I guess the 5 years leading up to it, it shows how these scattered rebel cells that are operating independently with very little connection to each other go from that to the alliance we see in A New Hope, where they are an army that can stand up against the Empire. And it's really cool seeing, again, how it's all walks of people are coming together from this rebellion, just inspired by Nemec's words in the manifesto that got spread in season 1, and how that leads to just these small fires that come together to create the rebellion that we know. So it's a really cool journey to Rogue One in that sense, and that, like, again, it's really establishing how that army came to be and how the people really make that army and fight for what they believe in, type thing. So it's pretty cool.
Well, that was a lot said about such a fantastic show. I feel like now we just need to give our scores, and maybe any final thoughts that you have, which we will do out of 1 to 5 sparks of rebellion. Nate, why don't we start off with you?
Sure, yeah. I love that. Sparks of the Rebellion. We go to some really dark and harrowing places this season, and I think it's so wonderful that we can get these incredibly rich, mature storylines with these deep themes and emotional arcs, and then we can also have fun with Grogu and the Mandalorian. You know what I mean? We can also have a fun pirate adventure with the skeleton crew. And I just think, and there even people who enjoyed The Acolyte, myself being one of them, I think all 3 of us were fans of The Acolyte up to a certain point. It never committed to the genre that it was sort of marketing itself as, whereas this is 100% that gritty political thriller war story. And it's so seamlessly blended into the world of Star Wars. And it goes to show that we can explore so many different genres inside this expansive galaxy that George Lucas created. And I enjoyed this season so much. There are so many incredible moments that are going to stick with me as a Star Wars fan. And again, I think the way it gives context, like we've been saying, to the events in Rogue One, I think it's going to change the way you're going to watch that movie. It's going to change the way you see Cassian, especially at the beginning of that film, and characters like Saw Gerrera. And I think this season wrapped up so well. I'm so happy Tony Gilroy and this incredible team, got to make this series and got the time they needed to deliver what I'm going to go on the record and say, and maybe this is recency bias, but I don't care. This is encompassing both seasons of the show, is my favorite live action Star Wars series on Disney Plus. I think this season for me worked maybe even more than season 1. And so I'm going to give season 2 of Andor a solid 5 out of 5 sparks of rebellion.
Darcy.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all said what we had to say about how great the show was. Again, my only gripe really being the fact that there are some gaps that I'm not sure if we'll be able to explore in a live action format. But the stories we got, like you said, Nate, they go to places that really show the effects that this growing conflict have on both sides of people from in all levels of society and in areas of the galaxy. And I think it's really cool how this whole season really feels like a prequel to Rogue One. And again, after finishing that last episode, I immediately was like, I got to keep watching. And when you see Andor for the first time, you're like, everything makes sense. Like you get, again, like you said, you look at him differently, and his whole journey through that movie, you see the moments from these seasons that were delicately crafted to show why he was the way he was in the film. And I think it was so well done. But yes, I'll be giving this one 4.5 out of 5 Sparks of Rebellion, only because there are those years that we may never explore, unfortunately.
Nice. Yeah, well, again, Andor Season 2 is as bold and gripping as you remember from Andor Season 1. I think it's, again, as you said, Nate, it's one of the most grounded stories that we've ever seen from the Star Wars universe. And I think it's visually stunning. It's emotionally charged. I think the series is just leaning into that genre of the political drama, the thriller, the spy thriller vibes that, just give it a very methodical pacing and a very layered look at the birth of the rebellion. And I think the unique release structure with each 3-episode block framed as a year in the lead up to Rogue One, it's ambitious. I think it's a very ambitious task because, like you're pointing out, Darcy, it's like you have to think about what happens in that year that makes it so integral, and what information do audiences need to have so that, when they get into something like Rogue One, which has already happened, or is a movie that's already out, how is it going to inform the characters, the decisions, and where they're at? And while I appreciate that format and the way it allows for a bit of a more focused storytelling, I think it occasionally worked against the momentum of the show, causing some arcs to feel rushed. And as I was mentioning with Bix, like just kind of being phased out, sort of, right? And and also very fragmented. But again, it doesn't go without saying, though, that still Andor proves that Star Wars is the strongest when seen through the lens of a genre, in this case, political thriller, the espionage drama. And I think that, relying solely on the legacy and spectacle you can't do that with Star Wars anymore. There has to be a take with it. And, Skeleton Crew nailed it. Like you said, The Acolyte had aspects, didn't commit. But I think it's Tony Gilroy's creative leadership and the sort of sharp writing and complex characters that really do remind you that rebellions are built out of sacrifice, strategy, and conviction. And I think that's what this show really does highlight. It's not just a prequel, it's a reinvention of what Star Wars can be in a lot of ways when you take that approach and that focused approach of telling the story with boots on the ground, with real characters that people can connect with, and people can also understand their vulnerability. So yeah, I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5. Sparks of Rebellion.
I was going to say 4 out of 5. What?
Yeah, sorry. I forgot what the thing that I meant to.
They're built on hope, dude. Come on,
bro. I know, right? Like, it's just hope is the is the secret sauce for all good rebellions.
That's actually, we should have written this. I think it would have been better if we wrote. That would have been the
Yeah,
line.
hope is the secret sauce of rebellion.
That's what Leia says. Yeah, at the end of Rogue One. So good.
I love it. Look, that is it for our spoiler-free review for Andor season 2. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you enjoyed our banter and our light humor. If you did, feel free to subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. And hey, you know what? There's a set of stars. 5 is the best. We would appreciate 5 stars. We love doing this. It's because of you guys that we're doing a lot of the stuff that we're doing with Star Wars. And yeah, we're super stoked about all the things that are coming from a galaxy far, far away, and the things that we're going to be experiencing in Japan. But we're not done talking about this show. We do have an interview out now with Genevieve O'Reilly and Tony Gilroy. I say it's out now. I haven't done the interviews yet. We're recording this episode early because we are leaving for Japan, but it'll be out. You'll be able to enjoy it. Also, we will have a spoiler-filled episode that will drop at the end of the last chapter, if you will, which I believe is May
13th.
May 13th. Thank you, Nate. So May 13th is the last chapter block, if you will, the last 3 episodes, and Darcy and Nate will be talking all things spoiler from Andor season 2. So if you want to dive in, find out a little bit more, I encourage you to listen to that episode when it drops on May 13th, because these guys will be just back from Japan and they'll be super tired. So
May the 13th be with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, but we have we have a ton of other great episodes out now for you to enjoy. Tons of spoiler-free reviews, like our spoiler-free reviews for The Last of Us Season 2, The Studio Season 1. We have our spoiler-filled conversation for Severance Season 2. Definitely a great conversation. The 3 of us definitely went to town on that show. We loved it. We also got some fantastic interviews out for you to enjoy, both on podcast feeds and on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Geekcentric. That's where you'll be able to find that lovely Genevieve O'Reilly and Tony Gilroy interview. But we also have our interview with Verada Sethu and Chudi Gawa from Doctor Who Season 2. Nate and Darcy had a great conversation with those two. They were vibing. They were vibing. Mm-hmm. And Nate and I actually had the opportunity to sit down with the composers for Daredevil Born Again, the Newton brothers. That was a really great conversation. That was a long episode. That's a 45-minute episode, because 40 minutes of that episode is the actual interview. So it's a very it's a conversation. It's not even an interview. It's just us shooting the shit, which was absolutely great. And speaking of Daredevil Born Again, we also have our spoiler-filled episode out now for Daredevil Born Again. Again, the 3 of us love that show. We get into it. So there's a lot of stuff for you guys to listen to while we're in Japan. There's also a variety of social platforms you can follow us on, like Instagram at We Are Geekcentric, and on Twitter at GeekcentricYT, and on TikTok also at We Are Geekcentric, for all of our Star Wars celebration coverage. We're gonna have a ton of it between Nate, myself, Darcy. We're gonna cover the shit out of this thing.
Yep.
Yeah, we're looking very forward to it. And then you can also stick around and follow along for some trip stuff. I'm sure Nate's gonna be there way longer than I am. So Nate and Darcy are both gonna be there way longer than I am.
I am too.
Yeah, exactly.
No, Darcy, I'm moving there. I don't know if we told you yet.
Yes. Oh, this is news to
way
me.
Longer. Yeah.
Yes, Nate and Darcy will both be there much longer than me, so they'll have a lot to post. So yeah, that's it. I think I did all the plugs. This is really loosey-goosey. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's wrap this thing up and get the hell out. All right. So as we say,
love ya.
Laters.
Peace.